Welcome back to Fear and Beer, a Halloween Horror Nights podcast. Join us as we venture year-round into the fog.
Make sure you give us a like and a follow on your podcast platform of choice. Also, be sure to check out our YouTube page where we upload every episode in its video format, and maybe a few other surprises as well.
Make sure you're following us on social media to keep up to date with our newest haunted content.
I'm Nick.
I'm Seamus.
I'm Jamie.
Jerusalem what? Why I can't hear Jerusalem tulip poozly what? What? Oh, you don't know shit about flowers. What's that? You want me to what? You another question?
I think I'm just going to start every episode with a random audio clip now.
I wasn't sure what was going on. I'm like, is he watching a reel and doesn't realize we started?
For Meet the Parents.
Oh, okay. That's why I recognized it.
Question? Sure. I got one question for you.
That's all. I'm just going to start every episode coming out with new audio clips that somehow tie into this episode, because flowers, you don't know shit about flowers. And you're right, I don't.
I don't know shit about flowers either.
But we're going to learn today. Actually, probably not too much. These are all stretches. But either way, we're going to be diving into these pesky little code words, these code names, if you will, for all these haunted houses that are coming to Halloween Horror Nights 34. And we're going to dive in because, yes, they don't always mean something. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But like I said on Instagram, what else are we going to be talking about in January? So it may all be for nothing, but we're going to speculate. We're going to start trying to figure out what some of these, could mean. We don't know exactly, but there's some stretches. But I've been known to stretch it pretty hard, and we got pretty good at this the last couple of years. We've gotten a couple of these, so I'm just curious to dip our toes in the water and see what happens. So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about tonight. But before we do that, let's get into some beers. I got one that's been sitting in my fridge for a little bit. I thought it was too funny to not get. This is the Gabagool. Spelled Ghoul.
I like that.
This is an Italian Pilsner. This is like a co-brew. This was brewed from Home State Brewing in Winter Garden. It's a nano brew, and then they also collaborated with Coppertail Brewing down in Tampa.
Oh, nice.
So this is the 10th anniversary they wanted to celebrate. So this is an Italian Pilsner. It's dry, it's bitter, it's dry hopped with German Sapphire hops, and it's supposed to have some sort of little spice and fruit aroma aroma. God, I can't read. I can smell it just from cracking it. With a light citrus note. So I didn't bring a glass, so I'm straight sipping, but it does have that Pilsner right off the nose. I can get a lot of the hops just from cracking it. I feel like it's gonna be pretty overbearing. As I try not to spill on myself. Yeah, that's smooth. I mean, it tastes, it's very similar to like that Stella style of beer. It's nothing too crazy, but it's crisp. It's refreshing. I didn't get a lot of citrus notes, but I got more bitter than anything, but it's pretty tasty, I'd say. All right, we got that stuff out of the way. Let's get down to business. So before we get into these code names, I don't think we talked about this last time. The rumor, did we talk about the rumor floating around of 11 or 12 houses?
No, I don't. No, because I think that didn't start
came after
traveling until after we released that episode last week. So
yeah, we talked about a couple code names last week, but that was before all of the madness started. So this is the rumor. The rumor right now is there is potentially 11 or 12 houses this year. So this all kind of started to creep out when these permits crept out. The first 8 dropped, and we were missing a couple of them. We were missing some from the Sprung tents. We were missing one soundstage one. And then later on in the day, the two other tents came out. So we have permits for all 4 tents. But the one that's missing, the one that's causing this rumor to really start, kind of coming to life, is that we received a permit for Soundstage 24B, and we have not gotten one yet for 24A, which is typically used. So now that's the question. It was like, where is it? Why has it not been processed yet? Is it a thing? Are they not using it? And from some digging that Horror Night Nightmares did, they went back. So the last time that Soundstage 24 was used just for one house was 2013. It was Evil Dead house, I believe it was. And on the permit, it only said Soundstage 24. So it brought up the point of when it has been used in the past, we have precedent of it being just Soundstage 24. So now, why would they put A and B on these permits if it's not indeed two different houses?
Yeah.
So that's sort of where this kind of got the ball rolling. And then Legacy came out and said, HHN Insider Legacy came out and said that they had heard more than 11 because people were like, oh, 11. So now the question is it 12 houses? And now to kind of dip into what we will be talking about in a little bit, the whole flowers situation. They always come, in a dozen. So is this why they chose those code names?
That's a good point. Dozen roses.
Like, is it them being cheeky? They want to just like put a little pizzazz on the code names and like have it multi-meaning purposes now?
Could be. I mean, that's not a bad thought. I don't think it's crazy to jump to that conclusion.
Or are they just like, we know you're going to think you're getting 12 because we're doing flowers. We just want to play games with you.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good point.
So either way, that's kind of where this rumor started to kind of come out and snowball a little bit. So, I mean, there's multiple reasons why it would make sense, right? They're shutting Rip Ride Rocket down in early September. Now, I don't think they're going to start doing any sort of construction on it, but it's going to be shut down. So you're going to need another thing. We always talk about people eaters, and we just have continuously not got more people eaters. It gets busier and busier, and we are in fact losing people eaters. We lost the Lagoon show, and then we're going to lose Rip Ride. Last year, I don't think Transformers was open, or one of the rides that typically was open wasn't open. So it's kind of just we're getting more and more people and having less and less places to put them. And it's been a little bit. It's been since 2018 since the house count went up, and we'll talk more about that for one of our little guesses. But I think it's needed. Now, the question of like, if we get a 12th house, where would that one go?
Right.
That's like the big question mark, because I have no idea what that Shrek Theater / Villain Con is. I don't know if it's used for storage or like back room stuff, or I don't know if it's vacant. I don't know if there is another soundstage that they can use, whether that's 20 or 19, or 19's a different, but I don't know if there's another soundstage. The MIB tent area there is no tent. There's an area, so I don't know if they're prohibited from putting something there or not.
Right.
So you're kind of like racking your brain, like, where could they put a 12th house other than popping up another tent somewhere else if all of those other spots are in fact taken?
Yeah, it would have to be a tent unless they clear out some of the parade warehouse for it. But
yeah, and even those ones, I'm curious, like I feel like that's used right now for staging not only the parade, but I think they're using it to stage some stuff for Epic.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. That could be used. Yeah.
So unless they do, that's a fast build right there. Because if they're pulling stuff out of there, I'd imagine they'd pull it all out in the next month or so. So
yeah, I would think so.
Maybe if one of those parade warehouses is maybe used as all just Epic stuff, and their plan is to pull that out in, say, February, maybe we get a build permit in February, like something like that. I don't know. But that's the question. So I guess, do you think that this is the year we do get some sort of expansion? Do you think we're going to get another house? At least one?
Yeah, I think we're going to get at least one more. At least to 11. But talking about the dozen thing actually kind of, it makes almost too much sense. Like it makes so much sense that it would be kind of I don't think it'd be that wild to go from 10 to 12. But you're right. Without the roller coaster, they're gonna have to think of something to, you know, even out the crowd a little bit, because without that roller coaster, you don't have that additional item or additional attraction that pulls people away from the houses. So could we see 12? Maybe. My thought would be, if we do see 12, it'll be probably um, either 5 IPs, or and like in 7 originals, or maybe even like 4 IPs and 8 originals. But
That'd be crazy. 4
but
originals.
yeah, I don't know. I guess we'd have to see kind of how it goes. But yeah, I don't think it's in crazy. I don't think it's crazy that we would see an expansion. We've seen an expansion in recent history. They've been talking about it. There's been rumors flying about them adding additional houses for the last couple of years. So this being the year would make sense, especially coming off what we would call a down year. And I
Yeah.
think they know it too. Like, they knew they definitely didn't go all out this year, and maybe this coming event they're going to want to, go a little bit harder, bring it, try to get people to come back.
All right. Like, please, please. So I'm curious, like, what the process would be. Like, can we? Not only do we have the space, do you have the staffing? Do you have the hours? Do you have the? I'm sure you have the ideas, but like, the staffing is just the biggest thing
So
because.
that's the biggest thing. Yeah.
And the crazy part is, like, yeah, you hear people say that they applied and they didn't get a call back, and it's like, I don't think you're in the position to say no to like, unless they're drastically not fit for the part. Like, you have to maybe start having some leniency with your hiring, because
Yeah.
you'd almost rather have maybe somebody that wasn't necessarily fitting the mold, but they're a body at least.
Right.
And
No, I agree. Yeah.
if you're gonna staff another house or two, you're gonna have to. And I don't want to say, like, you're not trying to throw away the quality of your casting, but something has to be adjusted, because you cannot
Yeah. You
have
got to think.
11
You
or
got to
12
think of
houses that are
something.
understaffed.
Right. Yeah.
So we'll see. I'm in the camp. That code name, like you said, it is too perfect, but I I feel certain that we're getting an 11th. Like, the whole permit thing saying just 24B is really making me be like, okay, well, if you're specifically saying B, there has to be an A. It just has to.
Right.
I
You would
doubt
think so.
that they're rerouting queue lines to be in Soundstage 24A just for the B house because of the closure. Because I don't think they'll start, like, taking the roller coaster down yet. I think it's just going to be shut down.
Right. So the only question would be is, if that's the case, maybe they do need to shut down that side of that normal queue, and
Yeah.
be without that queue, they can't necessarily use that sound stage, which, would be, to me, the reason why we don't see it here. But
Yeah, we've
because, like,
just
I mean, think about it with well, I guess, I don't know. It was weird because, like, when they remember, was it last year, the year before? Didn't they, like, remove the queue over by the stage, over by Fear Factory or whatever? But maybe not. Maybe I'm just
uh,
imagining things.
why can't I think of that now? Fear Factor. Well, that was just because they had just the one house and they had you wrap around now.
True.
They changed that wraparound over by MIB. Like, instead of doing
Yeah.
2 portals on that side, they did one. That was because of the DreamWorks
Right.
construction. That's why. So they
Right.
kind of
Right.
rerouted us a weird way. But yeah, I don't. We have seen, now that you bring that up, we have seen reroutes due to closures and construction. But I don't know if they'll be doing construction. My idea is that they would be shutting down Rip Ride Rocket early September, maybe doing minimal stuff like up top, like stripping electronics, taking apart the cars themselves. But demo won't start until after Halloween Horror Nights, just because they know that's that's a moneymaker right there, and they can't mess with that.
Yeah. I'm also a little skeptic. Skeptic, is that the right word? skeptical. I'm a little skeptical just because we've only gotten 10 code words. Like, what would be the point of concealing 11 or 12 code word, the 11th and the 12th code word, just to protect that? That doesn't make any sense. Like, if they leaked 10, they would leak all of them.
Yeah, well,
I guess.
So these are all the code names are taken from the permits. So
well, right.
The permits, I mean, they could be filed at different times, or they could be processed at different times.
Yeah.
I think the last couple of years, like we got them almost in batches. You know, there was like
Right.
3 or 4 at a time, and another 3. So maybe that last one is like undecided completely, or maybe they just know that because we're looking for them, they're like, all right, well, we're not going to give them the 11th one right away. We can get these 10 worked on, and then while we're working on those, you know, we're not
true,
building,
I guess.
we're not building 11 houses at the same exact time. So like one is always going to be last. So
right.
you can kind of trickle the process a little bit. So maybe they're, you know, privy to the fact that the sleuths are out. They're waiting.
Yeah, I mean, who knows?
But either way, I think we're getting 11, at least 11, based off of just the fact that it's the 24B. The 12 makes sense with the flowers, but that seems like a very big undertaking to do while trying to open Epic Universe. Because I mean,
well, it's fun to hope for.
Done,
so
but, you know, yeah. So I'm optimistic. What do you say? It's
hopeful.
not hopefully optimistic. Yeah, something along those. I'm not gonna
cautiously optimistic.
That's the one. I was trying to. I was like skeptically optimistic. No, that's not it. Cautiously optimistic. I'm not willing to get my hopes up completely, but it would make sense. Everything with all the cards laid on the table, like it makes sense. It's not that big of a stretch to believe that 11th is coming, being 24A. All right, so let's get into these code names a little bit, and we're going to start dissecting them a little bit and trying to see if possibly there's any sort of connections to anything. Now, I know half the time these don't really make sense until after the fact. You're probably not going to guess them, but let's have some fun with it. Why not? Why not? We have nothing else to talk about in January. So, and the fact that we got all 10 of them right now, like everybody else is doing it, why wouldn't we? So, Soundstage 22, that is where A Quiet Place was last year. The code name for this is Poppy. Now, I had my own thought on this one, and then I saw other people's pop up. But when I think of Poppy, I immediately thought of poppy seeds, which leads me to Seeds of Extinction. Kind of a rebringing back that property. It was last at 28. I don't know why I initially think of poppy seeds, but I did, and I was like, "Oh, okay, I could see that." But that's kind of where my brain was immediately drawn. But then I started seeing other people post about. Obviously, Wicked has been in the news. People really like Wizard of Oz. We had Wizard of Oz on our guest map last year because that's what I was kind of feeling like it was time to revisit that world. Supposedly, the West Witch, the Witch of the West, or whatever. I guess
Witch of the West.
Yeah, they use poppies to make Dorothy fall asleep in the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, it's been a very long time since I've watched the movie, but that does sound familiar.
So that would lead people to believe maybe some sort of Scary Tales iteration.
Yeah, it could be.
So a fun little connection. You know I love connections. HHN 28, that was the last time we had Scary Tales, and that was Scary Tales Doubly Ever After. That was a house. 28 was the last event that the house count went up from 9 to 10. Okay, interesting. Okay. One-off's not that crazy. But how about 2? Because the last time before that we had Scary Tales Scream Punk, it was the Scare Zone, and that was at 25. And that was the year that we also went up in house count from 8 to 9. So the last 2 times we've had a Scary Tales iteration, the house count has gone up. I don't know. Is that
not crazy? I mean, it's not crazy to pull those connections.
Is
So I
that
don't
the
think it's
magic right
wild
there?
to think that it's possible, and
The
it leads more credence to the additional houses.
and it's something that we've seen in recent history, last year before a little bit, where they're definitely utilizing stuff they already had on hand to zhuzh up some sort of house concept. This fits the mold, and it's an easy house to add to an event, being that you can just kind of pull from
Yeah,
whatever
and it
and
helps.
kind of create it.
It helps too that this is the year that their new park opens, so they're gonna have potentially more. I don't want to say space, but it'll be a little more open
Hmm.
for additional, you know, houses, additional guests coming in for horror nights.
And that's another reason why I think the house count might go up. They have to account for three giant hotels worth of guests that are also going to be not necessarily on
Right.
property, but in Universal's area. They're on
No,
Universal
right. That
property, but
makes
they're
yeah.
further away. But so I don't know. I just thought that was interesting that the last two times we had a Scary Tales iteration was on a year that the house count did go up.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's a yeah.
I've seen a lot of people say Scary Tales, but I haven't seen anybody pull that stat up yet. So I had to dig a little bit deeper just to kind of add my little flair on there. But that's what I got for Poppy. And it's also funny too. I didn't bring it up, but Seeds of Extinction was also at 28. So that was the last time houses went up.
Yeah, I wasn't there for 28, so I don't really know what that one is. But I mean, it sounds interesting.
It's
Is it plant
so
based?
it's sort of plant based. It's it was like a meteor hit the Earth and kind of
I do know which one this is. Yeah, okay. It's
it
like
was
almost like the giant ant house,
It
right?
was like not so, but this was Descendants of Destruction was sort of a sequel to this house.
Oh,
It's the
okay.
same universe technically, but it
Yep.
was like a giant meteor that kind of broke it out, and it was giant
Gotcha.
monsters have taken root. So they were sort of like plant based foes, you could say,
Interesting.
but also makes sense with the flower concept. Horror is
Do you
bloom.
want a really out there
Ooh, yes.
r-
You know I love those out there ones.
not rumor, but just an out there guess?
Mhm.
I mean, it's really on the nose, but we always have a music house. We don't always, but we tend to have. We've been tending to have music houses. She is kind of that weird alternative, spooky,
Yeah.
poppy metal thing. Literally, could see maybe a poppy house.
Okay.
Poppy, as in the musical
Yeah.
star. I know people are like groaning as I say that, but um, to me, she fits more of a horror night aesthetic than Billie Eilish ever would have. And even Billie, I mean, now obviously we're talking what, 3 or 4 years ago at this point. So Billie Eilish was definitely more in her, dark, her dark era. She's a little bit more poppy now, but poppy in the sense she's a little more like, bubblegum pop. But um, Poppy herself, the Poppy artist Poppy, I don't think it's crazy to think that they bring in someone like her to potentially do,
That
you
what they
know,
kind of had in their mind for
yeah, maybe kind of give the same idea to what Billie Eilish did. For all we know, she's a fan of the event. I mean, you never know. It's a little
only if,
out there, but
only if they throw Suffocate in there with Knocked Loose.
yeah, whatever. Hey, I
But
mean,
yeah, just
why
looking
not?
her up on Spotify, because I never really looked up to her. And the only way I knew her was from Knocked Loose, but she's got 3 million monthly listeners on Spotify.
Yeah, she's a pretty popular artist right
Oh
now. So,
yeah, I'd say that's, I mean, a stretch, yes,
oh,
but is
100%
it
stretch because
unreal?
it's like so on the nose, but
But is it 100% unrealistic? No, I don't think so. But yeah, so those are what I got. I don't know which I would prefer. I'd probably go with the Scary Tales iteration over Seeds of Extinction, just because we sort of had that with Descendants.
yeah,
We always talk about the end of the world cataclysmic stuff is kind of just sort of outplayed for us at this point. But
right.
so let's move along to Soundstage 23A, and this is where Monstros was held last year. And the code name for this one is Snapdragon. Now, I'm not even looking at what is on the spec map one to kind of go off of, because I think this was the little bird one that we were kind of speculating. But I also put under this one the Nightingale's Samurai slaughter fest that we talked about a week or so, or last week. Just the name Snapdragon. Dragon kind of just brings me to Asian culture, and that's where my mind sort of went to. Two others. One, the Snapdragon flower itself. Someone pointed this out to us as well. The picture of it, they kind of resemble clickers. So that could be
which is
The Last of Us 2, which
yeah.
has been rumored. So I don't know if my mind would have immediately gone there, but since it was already sort of rumored, I can see the connection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which, I think here's a fun thing. If they do announce Last of Us 2, I might just like live stream myself playing the entire game in one sitting, forcing myself to sit there for like however long it takes. Probably take me like 20 hours to play this game because I'm not good at games. I'd have to put it on easy mode, but a constant live stream in one sitting until I finish the game. That would be terrible for everybody, including me. But the last one that I kind of like this connection, Snapdragon. That is also a style of suplex used in wrestling. What if we pulled that Scare Zone property from Hollywood last year, the Luchadores Monstros? We know Mike Aiello is a huge wrestling fan. Now, I know some people were saying, like, oh, it could be people have always been wanting a Bray Wyatt, Firefly, Funhouse style house. I don't think that's going to ever come to fruition, unfortunately, just because of his passing. I think this would be more. I think if we have any sort of wrestling style thing, we're past the days of The Undertaker having houses at Halloween Horror Nights. That's kind of come and gone. I think if we see wrestling in any aspect, it'll be in an original format. And the fact that they had exactly what I called was our way too early, like 2 years ago. I was like, yeah, Mexican luchador sounds like a cool idea. That would be fun. Lo and behold, Hollywood does it as a fucking Scare Zone. But no, Snapdragon suplex is a move that's used pretty prominently, mostly in Japan, but the luchadors typically use that as well in Mexican style wrestling. So a Luchadores Monstros house. I'd love to see this as a house, like walking into like a ring, the sounds of the ring, backstage locker room, outside, Mexico City with all the luchadors trying to promote their matches. I don't know how the Scare Zone was. I didn't see it in person, but I'd be interested to kind of see how this could come out to a house. Do any of those? Where do you sit on any of those three?
I think the Asian horror, I think is to me the closest to what we will actually get. I think what you said the last episode last week when we mentioned that the icon kind of looks like a
nightingale bird.
Nightingale
with the little lotus flowers.
Snapdragon sounding very, Asian Japanese. I could see us getting some sort of like samurai era Nightingale's house, which I think that in and of itself would be awesome. Like I'd be so pumped for that. Might honestly be my most anticipated or most hyped original if that was something that they would do.
You've been asking for Asian style
something,
anything other than the Latin American folklore stuff. We've kind of we've repeated
done it a couple times now.
So we've had La Llorona in the past, but even more recently we had Fiesta de Chupacabras, and then we had the Monstros. It's nice to step out of that sandbox for a little bit and go to another.
Exactly. Yep.
There's plenty of sandboxes to play in. So Soundstage 23B, this is where Ghostbusters was last year, and the code name here is Violet. I got 3 for this one. Violet sounds like violent, and that could be Terrifier. That could be your gore, violent house. Because this is how they do these stupid code names. There's either some deep meaning or, this word sounded like this. That's one of them. I'll leave this one for my last one because I really like this one. In Megan, the actress that played Caddy, the girl, is named Violet McGraw. So a little actress tie.
It's an interesting little tidbit there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now my favorite one. I was just looking at Violet's the flower, and they have obviously a green stem. The flower is purple in most cases, and the
Yep.
inside of it is yellow. And those colors drew me to possibly a Mardi Gras murders, because those are the colors of Mardi Gras: purple,
Yep.
green, and gold. So maybe the color of that flower is kind of giving us the theory, giving us our a little hint as to what's to come. And everyone's sort of speculating a Slaughter Cinema 2, maybe not this year, but soon. But maybe it's this year immediately after Mardi Gras. If you're trying to save budget on house, construction, you have so many Mardi Gras props.
Or if you're adding 11 or 12 houses, if you're doing two more houses, what's easier than having to come up with like 12 completely wholly original brand new houses when you could say, well, let's take a couple of them and play with what we got. And it's not, obviously they've done it before. Yeti came from the original Slaughter Cinema, right? So
yeah, no, it's definitely, and they've come out and stated that Slaughter Cinema 2 is sort of their testing ground for ideas that maybe aren't fully fleshed out yet, or they're not
Yep.
sure how they'll be perceived because they might be wacky or whatever. And really, whatever gets the best reception gets kind of quote unquote called up to the big leagues, if you will. And I
Right.
think Mardi Gras Murders is probably in the top 3 of those ones that people were sort of asking for. Probably that one, Heavy Metal Hell, and probably Hatchet and Chains are the top 3. I'd say that could viably be a full house. Going down Bourbon Street, and the whole party scene. You could have the whole room spot. It's doable. And
Yeah.
again, with having all these props on hand, it seems silly to not look at some of your other events and what you have in your backlog of warehouses and be like, okay, this could, we could use this, we could use this. So now when they start decorating for Mardi Gras next month, I'm going to be looking around and be like, all right, what are they going to be using? How are we going to pull this into a house? What are we going to do? So that's what I got for Violet. Do you have anything for Violet at all? Or what do you think on those
The only
3?
thing I can think of that immediately comes to mind is Violet the character from Willy Wonka. Now I know we did the candy factory stuff last year with Mr. Sweets, but just something, it's just interesting to think that Violet being one of the characters, one of the bad kids from the Willy Wonka, do they potentially do some sort of Willy Wonka-esque house? Obviously I don't think they will, because they've already done the Major Sweets house. So I doubt it, but it's just that name stuck out to me.
So here you go. Violet, Willy Wonka, Willy's Wonderland. We're getting Five Nights at Freddy's.
Well, that's a stretch, but hey,
that's what it is.
You can totally 7 degrees or 6 degrees to Kevin Bacon this thing if you want to.
Oh yeah, and that's what these are pretty much. So, moving along to Soundstage 24B, and this is where Triplets of Terror was last year, and the code name for this one is Lily. Now, I don't really have much for this one. The only one was somebody told us, and I think we mentioned it last time, was that there is a character in The Last of Us Part 2 named Lily. And the only other thing in my notes, I guess I didn't finish my thoughts because I put Lily, silly, comedy house, ? So if 24B is a comedy house, there you go. That's why, because the Lilies sound like silly. I don't know. That's all I had for that one.
I don't think it's crazy.
Anything pop up for you on Lily at all?
No, Lily's tough because, like you said, there really isn't
much to go
anything
off.
that jumps out at you about that particular name, Lily. I mean, other than the fact that it usually is it's a girl's name. I mean, it's given out quite a bit. It's a unique name. I don't think it's necessarily common, but the Lily character from TLOU, if they're going super on the nose with the code words, then it makes a lot of sense. But they're never that.
No, it's not.
It's never that obvious. So I doubt that's the case, but you never know, I guess.
And I can only look up the the region of origin of so many flowers and find so many color schemes and search so many meanings on flowers before I go insane.
Yeah.
So Lily is up in the air. So Soundstage 25. This one has been unused for quite some time, but this is the codename Poinsettia. There's a handful of this one. Obviously, your mind it typically goes towards Christmas.
Yeah.
So there's sort of three options for that. I think either dipping into Slaughter Cinema 2 properties, going Killer Kringles. Terrifier 3 was just set during Christmas time, so a Terrifier style house.
Mhm.
Or if we dip into that German folklore and do an original Krampus house. That's where my mind goes for Christmas, if that is sort of the hint.
Yeah, I mean, I think Christmas is definitely the first place you go to when you think about poinsettias. That's generally, a holiday flower, a Christmas flower. We haven't really done a Christmas house in a while. So they could kind of go all different places with that. I wouldn't hate to see like a Krampus sequel because I never really got to see the first Krampus anyways, but
Yeah.
And
I'd
also
like to see an original take because the first one was the movie itself.
Yeah.
So I'd love to see like straight up like Krampus style, like just do your own thing.
Right.
Or maybe we
exactly.
get that, or maybe we get Gremlins.
I mean, Gremlins could happen. I mean, people have been asking for Gremlins for a while, right? I mean, it's kind of been one of those properties like It, where everybody just clamors for it.
Mhm.
So could they get that? Could they get the rights to that? Maybe. I mean, it's one of those movies where it's like, is this a Christmas movie? I know it's based on Christmas. Do we consider it a holiday movie? But it'd be a cool little tie-in to the code word. So
yeah, I that one has been popped up for a while. I think it was on the spec map for like 31 or something like that.
Mhm.
I remember it was quickly rumored for one point, but people have never stopped asking for it. And
right.
I feel like it's in the same vein of Killer Clowns. It's like, do people still care? And then you find out they do still care.
Oh, people still very much care. Yeah.
The amount of money you could make from all the gizmos and stuff like that.
Mhm.
All the little
Plenty of merchandising opportunities.
little magnet buddies that they sell, the shoulder pals you could sell.
Yeah, and I wonder who do they need to get the rights for that movie from?
I think it's Warner Brothers.
Is it Warner Brothers?
I could be wrong.
No, you might be right. I haven't looked it up, but
I just watched it a while ago for doing reviews on that one as well. But it
Mhm.
is let's see. It is Warner Brothers. Yep, it is.
It is
part
Warner
of
Brothers.
the Amblin Entertainment, so it's under the Warner Brothers.
Oh, okay. So, well, yeah. So that
helps.
I mean, they do have an existing, obviously, partnership, or they have worked with Amblin in the past. That's how they have ET.
Mhm.
So I mean, it's not impossible to think that they can make that work.
Yeah. And the only other thing I had for poinsettias is they are native to Mexico and Central America. So if we follow suit again, as we did last year, and we take the previous Monstrose house from Hollywood, we could do they had Monstrose 2 over there that could make its way over to our coast.
That's a good point too. Yeah.
Which I don't necessarily want. I'd like a little pause on that. Like we just kind of sort of said, dip into other cultures. If Hollywood wants to keep doing Monstrose, they can kind of keep doing it. But I'd prefer to have fresh takes. It's just
I'd like to see something new.
Samey. Yeah, it's a little samey, and I'm cool with like us skipping a year at least 1 year, maybe 2. So let's move over to Fast and the Furious. That's where Major Sweets was, and the code name for that is Jasmine. Now, again, Jasmine, I did not have a lot for because that's a trickier little flower as well. But it's kind of a little pale, innocent flower. Megan kind of comes to mind for small, pale little things. And then what is this note? So there's a village in Egypt that grows most of the jasmine used in global perfume industry. Egyptian original ? That was part of my notes.
Yeah,
or tying it to or mummy.
Or I mean, maybe they're going back to the mummy for the monsters house.
Yeah, if they do, and that's one of the other rumors.
And maybe, I mean, if that's the case, maybe we get a mummy solo house, which would be fine with me.
I'd be
I'd
cool
rather
with
them, I mean, if they're gonna keep doing the monsters, well, I'd rather them maybe pick, a monster and do a solo monster house for the first time ever.
Yeah, because Egypt is a setting that we quickly visited in Legends Collide and quickly tunneled through in last year's house, but I'd be okay with a full Egyptian
I mean
pyramid style
that, yeah. I
setting.
mean, that, or it'll end up being, a monsters collide type house, and it's set in Egypt.
Yeah. So that one's tricky. I do think I'm a little bit blinded on this to gravitate towards Megan just because that's what I think is happening and that's where I think it will happen at. So I'm sort of like not
I
looking
can
for
see that.
connections. I'm looking for how to connect Megan to it.
Yeah, I can totally see that, though. I can see where you're coming from.
Yeah. So let's move to the tents now, our final four. So tent number 1, this is where the museum was last year. And the code name for this one is Carnation. So I'm really tied to the what incarnation style. I'm really hoping for some sort of Western original. It's been a while. So I'm sort of gravitating towards that one. However, there are other little things I did find that carnations are typically from the Mediterranean region. So do we get that sort of Greek mythology original that we had on our guest map last year just because I thought it would make sense not doing a Poseidon's Fury, but following Dueling Dragons, doing something in that world to kind of give the fans a little bit of a taste of what they lost.
Yeah.
And then the last one, we sort of talked about this last week. Carnations are typically used for corsages, for prom and stuff like that. So do we get some sort of like prom themed house? We did have a house at Halloween Horror Nights 8 called Hell High. Could we get some sort of revisit to that? Like it's Hell High's prom night? Vamp 55, like do they put vamps in the house and have some sort of like Vamp 55 prom night style thing? Because I think that was a part of the scare zone, was sort of like high schoolers prom night style thing.
Yeah, and like I said last week too, I mean, you could also do Carrie.
Yeah,
because that
most
whole
famous
penultimate scene happens at the prom. So kind of a more of a stretch, I think, but I totally could see that happening.
Yeah, I'm kind of all three of those. I don't know what I would pick because I'm really like all of them. Either a Greek mythos style house, a Western, or like a haunted high school prom night kind of thing. I'd be down on all of those, but sort of tied in. Which one would you pick out of those three? If these were all,
I'm biased, so I want Carrie. But
taking
Carrie
out of it, if they're all originals, what would you?
I think I'd be down for another vamp or some sort of 80s high school movie like themed horror haunted house, like the Breakfast Club or whatever, but like done up like a horror movie, something like that.
I think it would be fun to go through like a high school setting as a house.
Yeah, and I like the vamp stuff too. So like I would totally be fine with like a vamp 85 or something like that and have it be like high school prom.
And it would be fun to have them get called up to the houses. Like it's such a scare zone property that fits well in the zones. And it is sort of hard to imagine as a house, but it can be done. So I'd like to see them sort of get that call up and be like,
well, okay, I think with that theme, it would have to be a house. Yeah. I don't know if you could do that as a scare zone. So
no. I just picture like, the prom in sort of like the gymnasium, like on the basketball court, like going through the hallways of the house, like trying to escape, or, somebody locks you in on prom night and the vampires are coming to feast on all the children. Like I kind of talk myself into that one a little bit. So that's what I had for Carnation. Let's move down to tent number 2. This is where Slaughter Cinema 2 was last year. And the code name for this is Iris. So I had 3. So there was, talking back about, Greek mythology and stuff like that, Iris is a mythological figure, and he was sent by Zeus to order Hercules to free Prometheus from his torment. So more backstory than you needed because all my idea was, again, Greek original, some sort of Greek mythos style house there. And being that it is a mythological figure from Greek mythology, I don't know if it's completely super far fetched. We know that the HHN people are huge history buffs. So, um, also, I thought of a IP. Iris is the colored part of your eye, and that last poster for Saw X had the
Had an
eye,
eye.
that eye like torture device.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if they revisit the world of Saw, they have another movie coming out because of course they do.
Yeah, why not?
So you know that there was a pretty good eye trap style thing in that movie. So maybe that's where it goes. And then the final one, I remembered. I was trying to think back of like HHN old of like what, you know, they were big on the eyes for a while for whatever reason, but they had at 2001 at HHN 11, that was the whole ICU Eddie style slogan. So if there's any kind of return to run Eddie's house or Eddie himself coming back in some sort of house format, not in an icon format, but having his
Yep.
house. He has the shirt too where it's just like his eyes and it says I see you. So I was like, huh, all right, I can tie that into, you know, iris and eyes and stuff like that. That one's probably the biggest stretch of the two, but
No, I'm gonna give you a bigger stretch.
yeah.
All right, I'm gonna give you a Nick style 6 Degrees to Kevin Bacon.
Okay.
So the song Iris is by the Goo Goo Dolls.
Okay.
Maybe
Yeah.
we're getting a Dolls IP.
Ooh.
Not IP, I'm sorry, like a Dolls,
Dollhouse
some sort
of
of
the Damned?
doll house of horror type deal for like an original idea. Or it's referencing Megan, who was a doll.
That one works. I do think. I mean, either of those, I'd be down. Not down for Megan. I'd buy both of them. But they did have that would be cool to go back because one of the houses that I've always wanted to go to, I missed it by 1 year, was HHN 24. They had a house called Dollhouse of the Damned.
Yep.
So that isn't that far of a stretch, I don't think. Goo Goo Dolls, Dollhouse, that makes sense.
Yep.
All right. Okay, that's a good one. I honestly like that better than any of mine. You know, the Greek mythology is the one that's most in your face. The other ones are big stretches, but I do like the step down that you're going for. All right. You sold me. Now if I don't get Dollhouse of the Damned sequel, I'm gonna be super disappointed. You better fucking listen, Horror Nights. You better fucking listen. So Tent 3. This is where Universal Monsters was last year, and the code name is Tulip. Now, obviously, if we didn't have the house last year, the biggest
I don't know the
connection
actual song, but
would be the Tiptoe Through the Tulips for Insidious. But we had it last year, so
they couldn't do that, could they?
They can't do that, right?
They wouldn't do that.
Or would they? For an 11th house, would they be like, you know what? Let's just give them the highest rated house back-to-back years because they've done that in the past. Not back-to-back years, but they did have American Werewolf in London, I believe, was the one where it received like such rave guest scores. They're like, well, we'll just bring it back. And then they brought it back. And then everyone was like, wait, why did... And then it received the lowest scores of the year because they figured if people loved it so much, they'll love it again. And it did not, in fact, work out that way. They ended up having one of the lowest scores. So they're like, maybe we don't do that. But maybe they do that. I don't know. I would be very surprised if there was an Insidious house. The only other connection I had for this was tulips are definitely more of spring flowers. And that led me to believe like Easter. So some sort of like holidays and horror tie in there.
Yep.
If we do some sort of, I don't think they do a full on Easter house, but Easter brought me to holidays. So maybe bringing that house from the West Coast over to East Coast isn't too far-fetched.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, again, I'm not a flowers person. I know that there's a flower that kind of looks like ballet slippers. I don't know if it's a tulip or maybe something else, but if this is the flower that I'm thinking of, potentially some sort of ballet dancing.
That was
maybe,
kind of the basis of Abigail, right?
Maybe, well, yeah, that, but I'm also thinking like it's a stretch, but maybe we get like a Suspiria house.
Ooh, okay. Yeah. And that's the fun part is like with all these stretches, we haven't really brought up many IPs.
Yeah.
You know, these are
Right.
tough to
Right.
sort of connect to IPs, so I don't know where we go with it. And of course, I'm sort of clouded. My judgment's a little bit clouded because I am instantly thinking to what has already been rumored and how to tie that in, um,
Right. Yeah.
which we'll sort of talk about now. Tent number 4, Goblin's Feast. The code name is Daisy, which will be my favorite house because it has to be. Um, there's been kind of a debate. Terrifier 2 when he's wearing the glasses,
The
whether
the
those are
daisy.
whether those are daisies or sunflowers. I Either way, I think they look like daisies, but because there's more white on them than anything.
Yeah, and I also think that's wishful thinking on a lot of people's parts too.
Again, connecting back to what has already sort of been rumored.
Right, because it's hard to say like, oh, well those are plastic sunglasses. Like do you really like it could be anything.
Mhm. So that has been one of the rumors, and then the other one, the only thing I could think of for Daisy was like probably the toughest one, or maybe because it was last on my list and I just ran out of time. The only other thing was I just remembered that line. Like you'll be pushing up daisies, so some sort
Mhm.
of like buried alive style phobia based house.
Yeah, I mean that to me that makes the most sense like cuz that phrase pushing up daisies is all about being buried after you
Mhm.
die. So, you know, maybe we're
Zombie
getting
house,
graveyard games too, like you just said, or some sort of
graveyard,
zombie
graveyard.
house or
Yes, I didn't even connect that. Pushing up daisies being buried when you're dead. Graveyard would make sense. So maybe graveyard games or graveyard deadly unrest, the scare
Yep.
zone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, it could be either or.
this is why we do this. This is why we go back and forth here. So yeah, okay, that got me a lot more excited for Daisy because I couldn't think of that. But also pushing up daisies to me like sort of reminds me of, and I again just basis. I'm pushing in my own wishes here, but is that it sounds like a country western slogan. Like I just think of cowboys like you'll be
Yeah, I
pushing
mean,
up
yeah, I
Daisy.
don't know where it comes from. I don't know like, who said it first or where it was created, but I mean, yeah, it could be some sort of southwestern phrase from
Mhm.
the days of yore.
Yeah, so that's what I had, but I like that. So I could see Daisy being tied to graveyards, whether that's Deadly Unrest or
I don't think
Graveyard.
it's wild. Yeah, I think that's
We've sort of revisited some of those stuff, right? Like like that that era we've sort of revisited in the past now, recently now, with Slaughter Cinema kind of
yeah.
coming back. We sort of revisited Scarecrow with Wicked Growth. It was like in that same world almost. Um,
And I also
Graveyard.
I desperately want graveyard games too. So,
It's just sort of like that's one of those where it's I don't know if anything's technically deemed untouchable at this point because when something is so successful, obviously you want to find a way to recreate the magic without ruining it. So maybe that's why they've taken their time with it. Like, do you do a Graveyard Games too? Is that an
yeah.
untouchable property? Like,
I don't think so.
I don't.
I wouldn't think so. I think it was a popular original. They haven't revisited it yet since 2019. So I
Yeah,
feel like
I don't
5,
necessarily
6 years is a pretty good gap in time to maybe do a sequel to an original.
maybe it's just me. I don't necessarily view any originals as like untouchable. Like I think you should be able to take those chances, and if you don't like
Yeah.
it,
Well, I mean,
it's not going to ruin the first one for me.
right, and it's not like doing an IP where there's a whole process involved in getting the rights to use it again.
Hmm.
Do you ruin the legacy of a really good IP house that you did once in the past? I think with originals, that's the whole idea of them is that they're supposed to be original ideas. So, you know, instead of maybe doing a direct sequel to the story of the first house, do a sequel in the sense that like we're visiting the canon of Graveyard Games, but we're doing different characters, a different story altogether.
Yeah, it's just you could use just that graveyard as the setting of like where all this like
Right.
crazy stuff goes wrong. Like this is like it's some sort of energy field where you step into a different realm where all your
Yeah, or
nightmares are
like,
reality.
the individuals that get buried there live very tumultuous lives, so they get buried with a lot of bad juju or whatever you want to call it, and that's why they're restless, something like that.
I like that. I could be down with that. Talking about all of these crazy, ridiculous things have only set me up for failure because I necessarily wasn't like super excited yet. The rumors have been what the rumors are. They haven't really tickled my fancy. But us talking about all these ideas has really gotten me more excited than anything. So I'm ready to be heard again. I'm ready to see my deep wishes not come to fruition. But I think that's all we got for today. This is all, and watch us now. I bet those other permits come out tomorrow or something at this point.
Right.
The way we work.
We get 11 and 12 confirmed.
Right. Well, that's what we can talk about next week, I guess. But my plan for next week, I think next week is the perfect time because it seems like this rumor season has started a lot earlier. Typically, what we've done at our mid-January point is last year we did our guess map where
Yeah.
we called our shots, and we I try to do this before spec maps, before rumors. I try to just call my shot, and we come up with our guess map of what 10 houses we think will be here, not based off of rumors, just sort of based off of our own intuition of like trying to find the HHN pattern and stuff like that. And last year we did pretty good. I had it saved somewhere, but we were we had Slaughter Cinema 2 on there. We had Sweet Revenge on there as houses. And it's funny because now this is the year everyone's talking about it, but we had Terrifier on there, we had a Wizard of Oz on there, and we had a Greek mythology house on there. So it's funny that we're sort of still talking about the same things, but
Yeah.
this was before rumors, right? We just kind of we call our shot on that. So I think I'm going to piece together a guest map for us off of 10 properties, original and IP, and we'll kind of present that to everybody next week and see if we can kind of nail one or two of these again, because somehow we find a way. Obviously we're wrong about a handful of them, but we put Silent Hill on there. Silent Hill was kind of close to A Quiet Place, so but it's still fun. So next week we'll go into our guest map. Hopefully nothing crazy comes out because I really like to go into this about as blind as possible, just because I don't want to. There's other accounts that kind of pop up here and there that sort of do maps, and they just kind of say the same stuff everybody else says. I like to say it before anybody says it, not saying we have any insider or anything like that. I like having fun with that. It's like putting in a
Yeah.
parlay and seeing what cashes.
Right.
I got a 10 leg HHN parlay, baby. But yeah, so we'll go through that next week. Sunday, we're continuing our Shutter Sundays, where we go into Shutter's best of the last year for 2024. Last week we talked about Late Night with the Devil, and this week on Sunday we're going to be talking about VHS Beyond, a little anthology series. So if you haven't
It's a
seen
good
that,
movie.
check out Shutter. Subscribe, download, get it all, because it's got a lot of cool stuff on there, and you can listen along either after or before. If you want to be spoiled, I would say listen to us. But if you don't want to be spoiled, watch it first and then come back and listen around. But it's a very fun anthology. Me and Jamie had fun on this one, and I know it's one of her. She loves that series as a whole. So check in on Sunday to see if she enjoyed this one. But any other thoughts, comments, concerns before we wrap this thing up?
No. Excited. I really do kind of hope we get news that they are doing at least an 11th house. It would just be something to look forward to. But all in all, having Mike back into the fold, really kind of heading up the whole thing. We know that I think they're going to go. I think, like I said in the beginning of this episode, I think they recognized that last year people had the opinion that it was good for what it was, but it definitely didn't feel like a normal traditional HHN. It felt lacking something. So I think this year they're definitely looking to, how can we go all out? How can we, put people's minds at ease that, we're as good as we have ever been. So whether that's coming up with some really awesome IPs or some really awesome original ideas, or like you said, giving us 11 and or 12 houses.
Yeah, I
think it would be a pretty big announcement. Anyways,
there's just so many reasons why to do it. Like Rip Ride closed, Epics in town. It does make sense to do it. especially ahead of 35. It would be nice.
I wonder, I mean, not to drag this on, but it does bring up an interesting question: is if they were to do at least one or two, if they did two or at least one additional house, how soon do we get that announcement?
I don't think they even lead with it. I
No?
think once the permit leaks out, they kind of are they sort of lick their wounds. I feel like they would just announce houses and then like they wouldn't even say. That's a great question. Would they come out and say this year, more houses than ever? Would they make the announcement of 11 houses before the houses, or would they just
Right.
drop would they do their typical 3-4 IPs and then drop like 7 originals, and then people add it up and they're like, wait, there's 11 here.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm curious. I don't. I'd have to look back. I would kind of try to look back to 28 and see what their marketing campaign was and see if they made an announcement like the biggest Halloween Horror Nights yet, something like that.
Something along those lines. Yeah.
I'm curious if they made any note of it before they dropped it. Or
like houses. The most epic Horror Nights ever.
Christ. Yeah, of course they would. I'm sure they would. Epic is universal. Universal is epic. Oh, man. A lot of stuff to think about. If you have any comments or if you think any of these things are going to happen, let us know in the comments. If you have your own suggestions of what you think these code names could mean, let us know. But I think we did some digging tonight. I think we might have uncovered some gems here. So
I'm tired of this, Grandpa.
I'm tired of this. That's too damn bad. Cole's house confirmed. Pushing up daisies, being buried alive, being buried in a hole, digging the hole, Shia LaBeouf, Disturbia.
It's happening.
You heard it here. All right. Well, until next time, this is Nick.
This is Seamus.
Happy haunts.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Fear and Beer, a Halloween Horror Nights podcast. If you like what you heard, don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on whatever streaming platform you are listening to us on. You can find us on all of our socials at Fear and Beer Pod.